Welcome back to the channel. Another video here, informational series. I'm super excited about this one, a beginner's guide on how to do the carnivore diet. I've seen a few videos out there and I think they're pretty good. We can build on those, and especially talking about some of the main points that I personally have experienced that are the biggest impacts in terms of executing the diet in a very effective way and getting the best micronutrients. I think there's things that we can really cover. So in this video, I'm gonna give you about 7 or 8 main points that I think are really critical if you're starting on the carnivore diet, and we are gonna jump through a lot of content. So stay tuned and let's just get right into it. So before I jump into this, I just wanna make a quick note. I am not a physician. I am not someone that's going to be qualified to give you specific medical advice because I don't know your situation. So I just encourage you to review this information for entertainment purposes and for information, but then go talk to your doctor if you're gonna make major changes. We wouldn't want you to do something stupid. It'd be bad for everybody, and neither of us would be happy. So just keep that in mind. And if you're gonna make major dietary changes and you have health conditions that are pre-existing, talk to your doctor. So that being said, let's dive into it. We're gonna talk about the beginner's guide here. I think it's important to understand what the carnivore diet is and why you're doing it. For most people, they wanna eliminate, they wanna see if they can do elimination, get rid of things that might be making them feel bad. And they also want to see if they can just optimize their health by giving their body the most bioavailable nutrients without these plant toxins. So let's talk about my first point, which is a quick primer on the carnivore diet. If you're new and you haven't really found out much about the carnivore diet, the main idea here is that the carnivore diet is a diet where you're eating just animal foods. You're eliminating all plant molecules. The idea is that plants can be triggering for a lot of people. They have co-evolved with animals, but they've generated natural toxins in their chemistry that affect animals and prevent animals from eating them. That's sort of their natural defense against predation. That's the premise of this idea. If you wanna go into more science, there's several videos in the channel earlier on that you can go into, and I go into much more depth on this conversation, the 6 keys to doing the carnivore diet, as well as the 8 myths. And they'll dive even more, as well as is eating red meat, is eating an all meat diet dangerous? I talk more about the kind of the models and the biochemistry. So the other main thing with the carnivore diet, and probably one of the more bigger controversial topics here, is the idea of phytonutrients that plants provide. And the idea here is that there are a lot of companies out there selling phytonutrient rich foods, dark chocolates, maca powder, kale, spinach, all these vegetables. And they're really promoting the benefits of these chemicals and these foods. What we're seeing though is that they're looking at just the benefits. They're not looking at the cons. If you look at my other videos, if you dig into the science, what you'll find is that a lot of these compounds like sulforaphane, curcumin, polyphenols in coffee, yes, they do have some positive effects on the human body, but they also have some negative effects. And the negative effects aren't being outlined because these industries are pushing billions of dollars worth of product, and they don't really have an interest in studying and outlining and explaining the negative effects. But what we see in the community is that people, when they eliminate these compounds, they can thrive. So that's all I want to say about the carnivore diet and kind of the premise of it. This guide, this video is really about getting into how to do it effectively, and how to do it with the minimal effective dose, so you're not really missing any of the main key things that you might need. So this is where we kind of get in the meat of it. And here's the big thing. Probably the most challenging part of the carnivore diet is the fact that it's so restrictive. When you look at society, socializing, bonding over food, what you find is that a lot of people enjoy sitting down and eating meals, and they enjoy eating a variety of foods. The challenge with this is when you're on the carnivore diet, you're really getting rid of a lot of that variety. You're going from 500 foods down to maybe 50. You just don't eat your avocados, your spinach, your kale, your almonds, your nuts, your legumes. You're just eating meat. And a lot of times when you go to a restaurant, or you're out with friends, or you just go sit down somewhere, or even if you come to a dinner that someone's prepared, there's just this this traditional thing going on where people have all these vegetables and have all these other things that accompany the meats, including the seasoning and the sauces, which often have plant molecules in them. So it becomes pretty unique and pretty restrictive when you look at the big picture of that. I started the carnivore diet about 9 months ago. It took me probably about two and a half months to really fully transition to a point where I was pretty much purely an all meat diet. There were some food items I had in my fridge that I wanted to finish off, as well as in my cupboards, and I kind of slowly ate those as I went about it. I had some spinach, I had some kale, I had some berries, I had some almonds, I had some dark chocolate, I had some avocados, which by the way, I thought were really good foods for me, and it turns out I just thrive much better without them. Everyone's different. So some people are gonna modify and go with a more modified carnivore diet. The beauty of the carnivore diet though is that you get to eliminate a lot of these foods, and just as you clean your system out and you get back to the core of just these animal foods, and you're not being triggered constantly, you can then reintroduce and see how damaging or how effective they are. So this piece I'm talking about right now, this psychology of it, is really just understanding, okay, you're gonna get really restrictive. In my opinion, probably the best way to do it is to slowly progress. Have a plan. Remember the reason why you're starting this diet. If you've ever quit anything that was really a bad habit, say smoking for me personally, I used to smoke when I was younger. It wasn't until I really kind of just shifted to the idea that I don't want to smoke anymore. And I just saw the value in my health, in not smelling like an ashtray, in the money that I was spending on packs of cigarettes. I just saw all the value in getting rid of that habit that just piled into one big like force that triggered me to go, I'm done. And I cold turkey quit on my like 18th birthday. It was funny. Smoked for 5 years up until I was 18. It was just kind of a little bit of a rebel. The same thing with the carnivore diet. If you go at this and you're like, oh, I love cheesecake, I love all these foods, that's okay. Just keep in mind, with any really big kind of challenging habit that you're trying to kick, you want to start to think about all the reasons why you're doing this. The health benefits, the indigestion, the mental clarity, the focus, the optimization of your body, the long-term longevity, the vitality. And you've got to feed that reinforcement. So a big part of the psychology and what's going to carry you through days when you are having like a bad day at work and you want to open a bag of peanuts or almonds or snack on some cheese, which you could do cheese by the way, or you want to snack on some chips or crackers or things that are kind of your go-to. It is to remember the value of your mission, right? To remember the reasons why you're doing this. Because the carnivore diet, it's really looking like this could be an optimal human diet. And if we look at the evolution of human beings, we see the largest growth in brains when we were carnivores. If we look at our acidity of our guts, of our size of our intestinal tract, there's a lot of ancestral and evolutionary evidence to support that being a carnivore is the optimal diet for a human being. Keep that in mind. It's a way to sort of reinforce things and write notes down. Help yourself remember the reason why you're doing this. Have patience. It takes time. It didn't happen for me overnight. You're making a major shift in a big chunk of where you derive a lot of your pleasure. You're eating food, it brings you pleasure. You're going to slowly have to wean off things. I used to have an addiction for dark chocolate. I would eat it every day. It was kind of like my reward and part of my pleasure. I've shifted that to things like producing content on YouTube to really kind of change the mindset of being a producer versus a consumer. Again, it's not easy, it takes time, but what you find is that these things can be massively rewarding, and when you're living aligned to your values, it's really, really powerful. I know you're probably looking for the diet tips, and I'm getting into those. I just wanted to reinforce how important the psychology of this is, because without the psychology, I can give you all the quick tips to execute the diet and the items that I think are most important, but you're not gonna succeed because you haven't handled the psychology. And that's really what's gonna kind of bring you back to the old habits and pull you away from staying on this diet for a period of time that you can really benefit from it. The other point I wanna make before we jump into the actual main staples of the diet is that there is typically a transition period of, I would say 1 to 2 months, where your gut flora is shifting. And you may have loose stool, you may have some diarrhea, you may have some indigestion issues. That typically happens for people. And it's sort of just a change in the microbiome and in the bacteria that's changing in your gut. Your body's transitioning from stuff that thrives on plants to stuff that purely needs meat and animal products. So that change is going to take a period of time. It shouldn't be discouraging to you. Just keep in mind that it's probably an adjustment phase and it will pass, and that you're not doing anything wrong. The other two things I'll mention is if you're eating a lot of rendered melted fat, such as processed liquid tallow, really greasy foods, or like a lot of collagen protein, those things for me early on were triggering. So it could be that. It could also be dairy. If you shift to a lot more dairy in your diet, that could also cause gut issues. So keep those things in mind. They can be triggering for some people more so than other things. So all right, now we're getting to the meat of this. So I've got about 5 more points I want to cover. The third point here we're getting into is this beginner's guide is focused on a nose to tail diet. I've seen other guides out there, and there's general advice on understanding the cuts of meats, the psychology, focusing on red meat. But I really want to encourage you to look at this as a nose to tail approach, because I think this can be a very sustainable, long-term, extremely nutritious diet if you do it from a nose to tail perspective. I also think it's really important to do it because it gives your body the nutrients that it needs to run long term. If you have deficiencies, you can survive for times, you can even thrive, but eventually they can catch up with you. If you do this from a nose to tail perspective, meaning you eat more than just muscle meat and salt and water, which is what you'll hear some people encourage, which can be okay for some, but I think you're still missing some key nutrients. You're not getting the whole picture. So we want to eat this diet in a nose to tail fashion. I'm going to give you 3 main staples that I really focus on to really hit that home. So the first one, and again, with all 3 of these points, I tried to keep it fairly straightforward and simple. I didn't want to give people really exotic things like go buy sweetbreads, thymus glands, pancreas, kidneys, heart. Those are great organs to go buy from animals because they give you unique nutrients for those parts of your body. But we want to hit home on the big ones. So the first one I'm going to mention is egg yolks. This is probably a very simple one for most people. You can get eggs from your local supermarket.
All right, what's going on? So I'm walking over to the Whole Foods, going to score some pastured eggs, some of these carnivore essentials for the beginner's guide that I've been recommending. Highly recommend you add this as a staple to your starter if you're on this diet. Organic and pastured. All right, so let's see, these are chicken eggs. I think a dozen. These are pastured. They don't use GMO. They're not organic. Those are organic, free range. They're not pastured.
I personally do duck eggs. They tend to have even more of the nutrients you get in regular eggs, chicken eggs, but you can get chicken eggs as well. The key here is to focus on pastured. Don't think free range or cage free. Those terms don't really mean much. Pastured means that they were out in a pasture and they actually were roaming around eating insects, having a more sort of natural diet, which builds up the nutritional profile of the eggs themselves. Egg yolks are extremely nutritious, and when we're thinking about a nose to tail carnivore diet, we do want to focus on a ketogenic aspect of the diet, meaning we want our fat intake, the amount of calories that we bring in from food, to be heavier, a larger proportion of it to be from fat than from protein. Generally speaking, I shoot for about 75 to 80% of my diet being fat. In order to do that, I have to eat about 1 to 1.2 grams of fat per protein. Because fat has 9 calories per gram, protein has about 4 calories per gram. We actually don't even know if protein really brings a lot of calories. We're not sure. We're kind of still figuring this all out. And then carbs are also 4 grams, but we're not really eating carbs on this diet. So I'll put a little blurb in here. You can get pastured chicken eggs. Ideally, pasture organic is the perfect profile, but if you're on a budget, it's fine. Even just regular eggs is fine. Try to avoid anything where there's GMO, and if you can get organic, that's better, just because you're then kind of ensuring that you're not getting any sort of pesticides in your diet that the animal had eaten and then passed on through to you. But chicken egg yolks are awesome. I don't eat the whites, and the reason for that is a couple reasons. One, I take down the yolks raw. Yolks raw is the best way to eat the egg yolks. There's a lot of vitamins and minerals in there, and when you cook them, you oxidize the cholesterol in the egg yolk. You also can destroy some of the water-soluble vitamins, and it just damages more of the nutrients. But the egg whites themselves have a compound called avidin, which binds to biotin and can strip you and make you deficient in B vitamins. So you want to cook your egg whites if you're gonna eat them. And that's primarily where the protein is, which we really, in most dietary concerns, want to avoid protein because it's easy to get protein in most items as a carnivore. It's more challenging to get your fat and your fat intake higher. So the goal here is most, if not almost all, the vitamins and nutrients are in the egg yolk itself. We want to eat the egg yolk raw to preserve those vitamins and to keep the cholesterol and the other parts of the fat intact in its most bioavailable, healthy form. And the egg whites have things in there that can strip us of vitamins, especially if they're eaten raw. So I just open the egg up, I sift out the egg yolk. I'll show you in this video here. So I just open up the egg shell, crack it open, and then just scoop the egg yolk in between and sift out the whites, and I take down raw eggs. All right, y'all, so I've got some pastured organic eggs here from Vital Farms. I picked these up at Whole Foods. I think it's $6 for a dozen. I also have another set of eggs here from a local farmer, Richardson Farms here in Texas. These are duck eggs, so you can see the comparison between the two. This one's a little bit of a larger duck egg, but you know, they're obviously quite a bit bigger. I'm gonna crack both these open and show you how to basically sift out the yolk. It's really easy. The reason we do that is to focus on our fat macro, and really the yolk is where the vitamins are. So I just tap it on the side, I stick my thumb in here, I break it open, and then you're gonna see here the egg yolk is right here. So I just open this up, and then we have the shell. And then I just, with the duck eggs, it's a little bit trickier to kind of get the white out off the yolk, because the white tends to be stickier to the yolk. So you can kind of see, what I'll do is I'll take the yolk and just pass it between each shell and try to like kind of just scrape the white off of it as that happens. It's not 100% perfect, like there's certainly still a little bit of whites in there. Try to tap, like kind of shake the shell out and get all the white out of there as well. All I do, I just take some real salt here and put it on top of the yolk, and then we just go. So good. So then, this is the chicken egg. You'll see the yolks are quite a bit smaller. See how much smaller that yolk is? And the whites will come right off and they're more runny. So I just kind of, same drill, just sift it between the actual shells. And again, it's not like you have to be like perfect, but that's how I do it. So I like to put a little salt on there. Delicious. I typically do 4 to 6 eggs a day, duck eggs. If you're doing chicken eggs, I think a half dozen is a fairly good amount for anyone decent sized. I'm 155 pounds. If you're lighter, maybe do 3 or 4. The last thing I want to mention about eggs is just a reminder of how nutrient rich they are. They have a lot of micronutrients you're not going to get from just eating muscle meat that you're going to get from these eggs. Plus they're fat heavy, so they're gonna help you stay in ketosis. And those micronutrients include more omega-3 fats, vitamin D, thiamine, niacin, riboflavin, pantothenic acid, folate, vitamin A, B12, B6, and vitamin E. And also choline, which is an awesome compound used in the brain. And it's one of those things that I actually, when I think about my day, going throughout my day, choline is really important to get a good amount of. It's been shown to help with cognitive function, with memory. So I try to eat at least half the egg yolks in the morning, and then I try to break it up and have a couple throughout the day, even with dinner, just to kind of make sure I'm getting a good amount of choline throughout my diet throughout the day. All right, so if you've watched any of my other videos on sort of the information around the carnivore diet, you definitely probably know that I'm a big fan of beef liver. I think liver is a unique one because this is a beginner's guide and it can be a little tricky to find it, but I have seen it at Whole Foods. It's more of a processed version of it, but you can get it at your local butcher shop. So if you're in the United States, there's many places you can order liver online. If you're anywhere in a community where you have a local farmer's market, it's usually very easy to source liver from farmers. Go to the farmer's market, talk to the farmers that sell beef, pork, duck, any sort of animal products, and typically they can get you liver. The idea here is that the liver is the bridge between the digestive system and the bloodstream. One of the key organs in the body that helps regulate the vitamins, the nutrients, and as a beginner on the carnivore diet, because you're getting rid of all these plants and your variety of food intake from all these different plants is going down, things like vitamin C, folate, riboflavin, you can get some of these from egg yolks, for example, but the liver is another fantastic source of a tremendous amount of vitamins in a variety of them. So make sure you really start adding in liver. Personally, I'm 155 pounds. I do 3 to 4 ounces of liver a day. Liver has copper in it, which helps you with your magnesium, your zinc balance as well. You want to make sure that you have enough copper coming into your body when you're taking in zinc from the meat. It has a good chunk of vitamin C, as we know is kind of antioxidative, which for a lot of carnivores can be a concern, not getting enough of that. And it's loaded with vitamin A for your eye health. Again, the trick here, go to Google Maps, look for like local butchers. If you can find them, a lot of them will carry liver. If they don't have it in stock, you can request it. The other place to go, if you have a local farmer's market, go there, talk to the farmers. Most of them sell liver. It's a pretty popular item for farmers to sell. It's a big organ in the animal, so they typically keep it and people realize the value of the nutrition in it. And if you live in the United States, you can go to websites like US Wellness Meats or White Oak Pastures, and they sell grass-fed liver and they sell it by the pound. It's not expensive, it's very inexpensive. You know, we're talking $6 to $10 a pound for high quality liver that you can get from beef or lamb or even chicken or duck. The last point I want to make on the liver is that you need to consider getting it in your diet. Ideally, get it in there every day. I just posted a video about how to make liver jerky. So if you're kind of a little lost on how to prepare it, you can do it that way. I personally take it in raw. Be careful with your food. Make sure that your source is a high quality source, that the food is fresh. But I don't have any issues from a concern around food poisoning, eating raw liver. And I think that the nutritional value of the liver is probably a bit higher because of the water soluble vitamins that would get damaged in the cooking process. So I eat it raw. I like it that way. The texture is a little bit of an adjustment, but liver is awesome. The last kind of main point I want to mention on this sort of journey of starting out on the carnivore diet is getting adequate fats. And this was really tricky for me. The idea here is that you want to get your fat macro, the number of calories from fat, over 70%, maybe even closer to 75 or 80%. The goal here is that what this is doing is this is really kind of aligning with what we think ancestrally, where humans were fat hunters. We ate a lot of fattier animals, and we know that if you eat a lot of protein but not a lot of fat, you can have what's called rabbit starvation. Your body converts excess protein into glucose, and it raises your fasted glucose levels. It can affect hormones in an adverse way. I know for me, first being on the carnivore diet, I ate a lot of ribeyes. And while I was eating those ribeyes and less fat, I noticed that my resting blood sugar levels were higher. And I've shifted my diet since and gone much heavier on fat, and it's made a big difference. So Eating fat is great on the carnivore diet, but the trick here is that a lot of the fat I find in the grocery store, for example, can be rendered, and that rendered fat can be difficult for people to digest. It can cause gut issues. And so the trick with that is, first, we've got egg yolks. Egg yolks are primarily going to be fat, which is great. It's gonna bump up your overall calorie intake to be heavier on the fat. But then what else do we add in? Well, we can add in fattier steaks, fattier meat, go for the cuts of meat that are fattier. Liver is gonna be fairly lean. There's almost no fat in liver. It's all protein and vitamins, and actually there's a few carbs in there because liver stores glucose. So we don't get it from liver. You can look at sources like Epic brand tallow. Personally though, I find that melted rendered fat causes gut issues. So what you really wanna find is things called suet and unrendered tallow. And these are the fat trimmings that come off the animal that are not melted down. They're not liquefied. What happens is when they liquefy, when you take it into your body just doesn't, for whatever reason, it's not adjusted to handle that amount of fat going in a liquid form. Eating the fat solid doesn't cause the same GI issues, but once it's liquefied, it can cause those issues. Think of really fatty cuts like maybe pork belly, if you like pork, ribeye steaks, if you can afford that, some fattier cuts of meat or lamb where you can find it. And also think of like things like suet and unrendered tallow. And you can find these items through your local butcher shop. You can call them up and go, hey, do you guys have any fat trimmings? Do you have any unprocessed tallow? You can go to the locals farmer market. Here in Texas, they sell tallow. It's sealed, it's in a bag, and it's the fat chunks. It's great. You can also go online if you're in the United States, and you probably have options if you're in other countries in Europe or in Australia or Asia, where you can find butchers or farms that are selling online their fat as suet. Suet is the fat around the internal organs of the animals. There's quite a bit of fat internally within the animals. It comes off in chunks, and I'll show you in some of these videos there. Suet is really a great source of fat. It's something I personally, you just eat it raw. You could sear it and then salt it and then add it to your plate. Just kind of keep in mind, again, any of the melted part of the fat, you want to kind of drain out and be careful that it doesn't trigger you. Look at this. You can see on the top all the fat, all the rendered fat from the actual broth that came out. We're going to scrape that off. If you have suet, if you have unprocessed tallow, you're in great shape. You're going to find that you're going to be eating a lot of fat. You're going to be eating some liver. You're going to be eating duck eggs or chicken egg yolks, and you're not going to have nearly as much steak as you thought you would on this diet. But I think if you follow this beginner's guide and you do these three main things, get those egg yolks, get that liver, and focus on these sources of fat that are not rendered, you're gonna feel amazing, and you're gonna be really, really appreciating how great your gut is responding, how great your overall vitality and strength and energy levels are becoming because of all that. So one last thing I'm gonna mention, which is kind of a bonus, is get the app MyFitnessPal or another calorie macro tracking app for your phone. These are free tools, and get a scale. So when you bring out the food, weigh it out and set a target goal for what you want your weight to be and what you want it to become. This again is more advanced. I don't wanna say it's a beginner thing, but when you're eating things like tallow and suet, it can be really easy to overweigh or underweigh the amount of fat you're getting without having a scale. The scale would be really kind of the first point, just making sure you know the scale and you know how much you're getting. 100 grams of tallow is gonna be around 900 calories. For most people, that's approaching half of the daily food intake you're gonna have in terms of calories. Now, when you're eating meats, they're less dense. They're gonna be much more protein. And so you're gonna find that you can eat more volume of meat and you're not getting as much calories. But get a scale, get a tracker, build that habit of tracking your macros and tracking what you eat. It's gonna do two things really majorly for you. One, it's gonna make sure you stay true to the keto aspect of the diet. And two, it's gonna help you remember and realize when you have a day where you wake up or have bad sleep or feel like crap, you can look at what you ate the day before because you tracked it. And you can go, all right, well, I added in smoked salmon yesterday. I can't deal with the smoked aspect of the cured meat. It triggered me, and that's really the only new thing I've had, and this is the first night of kind of crummy sleep I've had, or the first day of waking up not feeling the best. So that was a lot to cover. I think we covered a lot of really great stuff as a beginner's guide. Remember to get your egg yolks, get some liver, and get some great sources of fat. And then if you want bonus points, go on and start tracking and weighing out the food to kind of get on the train there. And let's continue on this journey of really getting into this carnivore diet, optimizing our health, our vitality, our strength, our overall well-being. And as always, thank you for watching. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. Down in the description, I have my Instagram if you want to follow me at CarnivoreKurt. I also have a website, CarnivoreKurt.com. You can go there and sign up for the newsletter. I haven't been publishing articles yet, but I do publish articles that are like this video, but written out, because I use outlines, and I think for some people it's just more digestible. And there's also a podcast coming out called the Carnivore Kurt podcast. So thank you very much. If you're new, you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, like, comment, and as always, stay carnivorous. I'll see you guys in the next video. What's up, carnivores? So I wanted to do a quick showcase of how I do some of these staples. So I've got with me right here about 100 to 150 grams of raw beef liver. I've also got a huge bag of beef suet. So I'm gonna lay these out, weigh them, and then I'm going to eat them. So I've got a scale here, an Ozeri. This is about $15 on Amazon. I'm gonna put the plate on and hit the tare. It's gonna zero out raw liver here, put it on this plate. It's actually 200 grams. So I'm gonna cut this bad boy into half because I know that I don't want 200 grams of liver right now. Maybe a little less than half. It's about 100 grams right there. Part of my lunch. Great, so I've done the liver, and what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna do 50 to 75 grams of raw suet. It's actually quite delicious in my opinion. Keep in mind, I did wash my hands very thoroughly before handling this. I'll go with around 60. It's really easy with suet to get your calories really high, so just be careful with that. But it's also a great source of heavy fat. Keep your keto balance on the fat macro. The other thing I like to really do with these is for the suet itself, I've got some real salt here, and then I have some glycine. I don't use a lot of glycine, but I like to add a touch of it to the liver as well as the suet, because it sort of adds a texture of sweetness. So like if I just do a plain, it's really, just imagine eating like a big fat cap on the edge of like a ribeye steak without all the seasoning. That's kind of what it tastes like. Salt this. Same drill with my raw liver. Take the glycine, tap it out. The glycine has a sort of a sweet taste. Let's go ahead with this liver. It's a little tougher, but it's so nutritious. Not even a doubt in my mind that I'm getting a great amount of nutrients from this. I like to eat it with the suet because the liver is so heavy in protein and the suet is more just pure fat. It's a good balance. Done. Gone. Liver, suet, fantastic start to the day. My nutrition.